As you can see, I finally made World Series in ranked seasons. World Series is very difficult to make. There are only around 1,500 people in the world right now who made World Series in the first season. Obviously, there's still time left, but that is a very small number compared to the amount of people that play Diamond Dynasty. And today, I'm going to be discussing how and sort of tips, and it's basically just my advice on how to make World Series in MLB The Show 23. The first thing I'm going to talk about, which is a really under the radar tip, is lineup construction. Now, looking at my team, I have an amazing team, and I got this no money spent because I grind this game. But you don't need the best players in the game, especially this year, because of the sets and seasons where we get 99s day one. You don't need the best cards in the game like I have. Obviously you would want it, but you don't need them to make World Series. So basically what I'm trying to say here is you really want to construct a lineup and then pitching as well that really helps you with matchups, because in ranked seasons, if you play the matchups, you're going to have so much better luck. Or maybe not luck, but just you'll be better off. So let's take a look at my lineup here. Leading off, I have Shohei. He is better hitting-wise against righties. Second, Derek Jeter. He's better against lefties. Trout, better against righties. Babe Ruth, the same versus both sides. Sammy Sosa, better against righties. Murakami, better against lefties. You see what I'm doing here? Better against righties, better against lefties, better against righties. There's so many times when I've seen lineups that are either full of guys who are better against righties or the opposite. Structure your lineup with players that are good against righties and lefties and space them out. So like I have a guy better against righties, lefties, righties, lefties throughout the whole lineup. The reason why I'm doing that is because when you have, for the starting pitcher, it's not necessarily as helpful because the starter is going to be either righty or lefty, so it's like 50-50. But when you get near the end of the game and you have people using their bullpen and trying to play the matchups, which I'm going to talk about after this, if you have a lineup that is lefty, righty, it's going to be really hard to play matchups. For example, let's say somebody is facing the top of my order to start the 9th inning, and they have a decision to make. They are either going to bring in a righty or a lefty. So they look at my lineup and they see Shohei Ohtani is much better against righties, Derek Jeter is better against lefties, and then Trout is better against righties. And so basically what they would probably do is bring in a lefty. Now, since the lineup structure is so good, yes, they're going to have the 2v1 technically because they're going to bring in a lefty and you have two guys that are better against righties, but that matchup with Derek Jeter is going to give you a really good chance to do some damage. Also, if you're wondering what that noise is, I have no idea what they're doing outside of my dorm building, but anyway, basically that's what you want to do with your lineup. And then on the bench, my recommendations would be have a pinch hitter who destroys both sides, and you bring in, no matter what, he's your first pinch hitter. For me, it's Mark McGwire. He's really good for power and contact versus both sides. Then for the two other bench spots, not including catcher, you're going to want to have a backup catcher because it's nice to have another catcher so you can pinch run. I like to do, not necessarily, so this year there's only 4 bench spots, so you don't use your bench nearly as much because of the DH. But what I like to do is I like to have a hitter who is really good defensively and has speed and is a good hitter, obviously, for the infield, and then the same for the outfield. This Francisco Lindor card has 97 fielding, 96 reaction, and pretty solid speed, and he's a good hitter too. While Jock Peterson is, I'm looking to change this for Jock Peterson because his fielding isn't that good. Once I get Chipper, Jazz will take this spot, and he'll have really good defense and speed, and he'll still be a good hitter. So that's what I like doing with my bench, and then the last spot be a backup catcher. Moving to the pitching. Pitching wise, starting rotation, doesn't matter the handness, just get your best guys up there. For bullpen, I like to have at least 3 lefties because you need lefties to play matchups, and then the rest of the guys can be righties. On the contrary to what I was saying earlier with the matchups with Jeter getting the matchup versus the lefties, You're going to want to do the same thing when you're pitching. If you're coming up to an inning and there are 3 hitters and they're all better against righties, bring a lefty in. Just be smart about it. If you're in the 7th inning and your starting pitcher is doing pretty well, but he's starting to lose energy, and he's a righty and the next 3 guys destroy righties, bring in a lefty. There's no hurting feelings of these virtual cards. Do what's best for your team. Don't try to stretch guys out. Play the matchups near the end of the game. I'm just going to quickly show you guys my settings as well for hitting, or for cameras. I'll go through the cameras first. I do strike zone 2 for both hitting and pitching. The reason why I do a hitter's camera for pitching is because when you're pitching, or at least when I'm pitching, I like to have the view of my opponent so I know what he's going to see when I throw it. Because there will be tons of times when people are throwing pitches and they're like, why was that a ball, when it was right on the corner, but they're not zoomed in enough to see that it was actually a ball. Or they throw a pitch and it was like, that's not what I wanted to do, but they didn't realize it because they didn't have the viewpoint of the hitter. For hitting, these are my settings. Obviously do zone. For PCI anchor, I don't really use it that much unless somebody is spamming pitches in the zone, then I use it. I used it one game, I think, and it ended up helping me tee off on him. For the PCI, I like doing diamonds and starfighter. I do red color and 100% transparency. I don't understand why people make their PCI so like ill transparent, if that's the correct word. Those of you who don't know what transparency is, it's basically the see-throughness of your PCI. It's a term that you use in Photoshop where you can see through it. So if it's at 100, it's going to be a solid red color and you won't be able to see through it. Yeah, so these are my hitting settings. Now for pitching, I'm still using pinpoint. I can't trust the meter or any of the other stuff. I like pitch trail, just so you can see where the ball's going no matter what. Throwing interface button accuracy, throw canceling on, accuracy chevrons on, drifting. I like doing the drifting ball instead of the whatever this is called, the track ball. So now I'm going to walk you guys through my hitting mindset. So we're just in a play versus CPU game right now. But obviously, got to know what pitches the pitcher has. So we're facing Kyle Freeland. He has 4-seam, slider, sinker, knuckle curve, circle change. So just put that in your mind. Another thing that I like doing is in the beginning, like the first few innings, I like to be overly patient. So I like taking a ton of pitches and just really feel out the pitcher and see what he's doing. So that's what I'm going to be doing right here. So we started with an outside fastball. Okay, if you're going to throw one right down, I'm just going to hammer it. And this is just play versus CPU. But I like to see how my opponent pitches. Obviously not taking every pitch, and if he gives me a pitch to hit, I'm going to swing. But like, for example, okay, he's going 4-seam. So that's the second time he's gone 4-seam in this zone. So I just keep that in mind for the later innings. There's a curveball that I'm on. So basically, I just, for the first few innings, am really trying to feel out my pitcher. Okay, let's pretend this is like the 4th inning and I've seen my pitcher for a couple innings. Now what I'm going to want to do is sort of predict what's going to happen, and you can use the PCI anchor for this. So let's say that this guy has thrown a ton of 4-seams inside on righties. What I'm going to do is I'm going to PCI anchor inside, and I'm just going to wait for it. That time I just reacted. But that gives you an example. You sit on the pitch that he's been throwing constantly, and then you react to something else. And then after you dominate that pitch they've been spamming to start the game, you sit on the other pitches and you just tee away, because they're going to stay away from that pitch when you start hitting it, and then it's just going to be off speed most typically. I don't know why I was running there, but off speed most typically, and you can just swing away and hit bombs. Another thing too is if you're facing a pitcher who throws really hard, like in my World Series game, I faced Hunter Brown, the Future Stars card. He throws 103 on the 4-seam and a 94 slider. Instantly, my game plan was to sit on the fastball and react to the off-speed. If I am brutally early on the off-speed against that card, it's fine, as long as I'm timing up that 4-seam. And I destroyed the fastball because I was ready for it, and I was ready for the 103. Now, Kyle Freeland isn't throwing 103 right here, but I was ready for that really fast fastball. So if you're facing someone who throws super hard, just sit on the fastball early and react to the other pitches. One last thing, which if you guys have watched my gameplay videos, you will notice, is when the opponent is throwing a ton of balls and they walk people, what I do is I literally put the controller down and I take my hands off the controller until either they throw a strike or 2 strikes, depending on the scenario. If it's a close game, then or if it's in the later innings, I would typically only do 1 strike because I need to hit the ball if I'm losing. If it is like in the 4th or 5th inning, I'm taking my hands off till he throws 2 strikes, because if he just keeps walking my guys, especially when it's the beginning of the game and people are reluctant to take out pitchers, that's what's going to result in those meatballs that you just hammer and you hit homers off of. Okay, so moving on to pitching, and I know that thing outside is still going on if you can even hear it. But anyway, for pitching, for my pitchers, for the pitch mixes, my criteria is they have to have at least a sinker or a cutter. They just have to have it. If they don't, they're not really going to be a good card. It's unfortunate, but for example, Shohei Ohtani has the cutter. He has the cutter. He doesn't have a sinker, but he has the cutter, and he throws super hard. For starting pitchers, my most important stats are hits per 9. Maybe, I don't want to say walks per 9 in control, because sometimes they can be deceiving, and I'll talk about that. But hits per 9, pitching clutch, and velocity, 100% are the most important attributes. Because guys who throw hard, it's harder to hit. Guys with higher hits per 9 and clutch, the PCIs are smaller. For my pitch sequences, I like to go against righties. I like to go fastballs inside. I don't typically go fastballs outside too much. And then I like going sliders away. So let's go slider away. Okay. Cutters against righties, I like going away, because cutters are fastballs that move like that. So why would you have a cutter go inside and it's not really moving? Like, okay, well, I'm playing the computer, but I throw maybe 2 cutters inside on righties, but I like to go slider and off speed away, and then I like to go fastball inside. Now for lefties, it's a little different. I rarely go outside here. The only time I'll go outside here is to keep someone on their toes. So what I typically do, so let's say, so I'm facing Charlie Blackmon. Let's say the cutter's been doing well. I'll go cutter in, right there. Then I'll go slider in. Oh, thank God that thing's off. I'll go slider in. And then I'll notice that Charlie Blackmon was early. And since he was early on the slider, you want to stay away from the fastball, because he was sitting on the fastball, and you're going to want to go with something even slower, the curveball. And now curveballs against righties, you want to be, see, he was really early on that. Against righties, you want to be careful. I don't really set them up in the zone because they hang, but in that spot it worked. So another righty, let's go slider away. Let's go fastball down and inside. There we go. And then typically after a fastball, not all the time, but I like doing splitters with Shohei because it's a fastball that dips down and it works right there. So that is going to be it for this video. If you guys have any other questions, drop them in the comments. I definitely forgot some stuff too. But yeah, if you guys are new here, I'm Nick from Big Ants Gaming. Follow me on all my social medias. TikTok, Instagram, Twitter if you want. But most importantly, make sure you guys are subscribed here. So yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.